This is Paul Schatz, the president of Heritage Capital. Still with us in the studio here in London, Richard Cookson, global head of asset allocation at HSBC. Richard, just your view on this, the fact that the Bank of England governor is talking about the possibility of cutting deposit rates, and we're at 0.5%, I think. So, I mean, it's the possibility of negative interest rates.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is quite attractive in theory, because what you do is by cutting the amount of interest you pay for holding reserves at the central bank, you actually encourage, as King was pointing out, you encourage banks to go and lend to companies and households more. That's the theory. The problem is that actually banks have been earning quite a lot of money from those deposits, and risk-free money from those deposits to the central bank. So the question is, do you want to perhaps undo some of the hard work you've done on stabilising the financial system? Moot point, A, and B, I guess the big question is that even if they did cut the deposit rate, it could just mean that they go and buy short-term government debt instead.
Yeah, Paul, I mean, is your view, these reserves that the banks have and the money that and institutions are being funneled, getting funneled from quantitative easing, it's not being lent out. Is that how much of that is the reason for the rally that we've had in both equities and in the bond markets at the same time?
Well, first of all, I agree with Richard that it's just another creative way to try to get banks to lend money. I mean, the governments have done essentially everything they can do to almost force banks to push money out the door. It's not going to happen, and that's also one of the reasons why you're not seeing this real, spike in inflation. There's a ton of money in the system, but it's being kept at the banks. I do think liquidity is the #1 reason we've seen the financial markets so strong since the March 5th bottom. And I see that continuing, but it's getting long in the tooth. To me, we're getting to I guess, the first opportunity for a significant equity market correction come early to mid-October.
Paul, it's more here in Asia. Let me ask you this. We have seen some of these banks that back in October of last year seem to be on the brink and then turn around and post, in some cases, record profits for the first couple of quarters of this year. When you look at the overall health of the financial sector and the businesses and the weeding out between the weak and the stronger, does it make you more confident about investing in financials at this point in time?
Absolutely not. Listen, if your business was struggling on the verge of failure and I write you a blank check, how do you fail? I mean, that's the argument. The government did, essentially said to the banks, whatever you need to survive, we're going to write you a blank check. Doesn't matter what your competition is doing, we're going to funnel as much money as you need. So by default, you have to survive. I'll argue that the minute they turn that spigot off, well, if the banks aren't going to lend now, they're hoarding the cash, what's going to happen when the spigot gets turned off? Now, you're going to have a liquidity vacuum.
Paul, hi, it's Richard Cookson from HSBC. I was wondering, on the timing of your equity market correction, you were talking about mid-October. Any reason for that?
I mean, a couple of reasons. First of all, and you could say it doesn't have to happen in mid-October, but we've had just a vertical run from the March 5th bottom. Similar to the run we had in 2003, not the same magnitude, similar to runs we had in coming out of the 1974 low from December to the summer of '75. So timing-wise, this is about the longest a rally has ever run. I can make an argument that some of the Fed's programs are being quietly unwound behind the scenes. Some of the liquidity is being pulled. And the rally is beginning to get a little more selective. October, once you get by September, people are going to breathe a sigh of relief. Wow, we got by the worst month. And typically when September is a strong month, you do get this October pullback. I just think because we've run so far, because the rally is getting more selective, the pullback correction is going to be deeper than anyone prepared for.
Paul, here in the United States, we're talking a lot, obviously, about President Obama's push for reform at the banks. How do you think that could affect your outlook if we do see some of that reform?
People always ask me, what's going to cause the correction? And a lot of times, as we know, news events come out of nowhere, unintended consequences. My biggest fear when I go to bed every night is what is Washington going to do to derail the rally, the less worse, the almost economic recovery. And my worry is, you know, come October, I heard Barney Frank yesterday, I hear them jawboning. I'm terrified that if they push healthcare and the financial reform through together, you're going to have this big blow up. And the markets, as we all know, hate uncertainty, hate all the spending, and maybe that's the reason. Maybe it's a geopolitical reason that none of us can even fathom right now.
Richard, just a final thought on that?
Yeah, no, I guess I have some sympathy with the view. I guess my big problem in all of this is we just don't know what investor positioning is at the moment. I find it quite difficult to get a read on that one. I don't get the impression that many people have been participating in this rally, dramatic though it's been. And whilst that's the case, it's quite difficult for me to see financial markets, but equity markets in particular, falling that much. I guess my bigger bets have been on credit. I still think credit's extraordinarily cheap, even given the problems he's talking about. So I'm pretty comfortable with that. But yeah, I wouldn't rule out an equity market correction. I just don't think it's going to be very big.
Okay, Richard, good to see you today. We're going to let you go now. Thanks very much. Richard Cookson, Head of Asset Allocation at HSBC. Paul, you're going to stick around. We're going to talk to you some more. Thank you for now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's check on the Japanese markets here. Asuka Kondo from the Nikkei joins us now live.